So just in the process of masking up. It's quite tricky. What I've done is I put the tape down, then drew freehand with a pencil the shape as best I could, and then we've cut it out. This is looking a little wide, so when I compare it to that, you can see I've got it a little wide here. It's sort of thinner, so that means that this has got to change shape a little bit. So we'll work on that in a minute. I'm just putting tape down on this side, so I thought you might be interested to see me try and draw freehand this. So as I look at this, it nearly touches the edge of the window, which has got a little raised lip, which is actually going to be painted in leather. So my start point is there, and then it's curving round just slightly beyond the window, although you can't see it very well, so don't know for sure. And then I'm just sort of connecting the two up, sort of thing, so that it sort of looks right. So that bit's right, but we need to change the shape a little bit to get this a little bit narrower. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim this bit of tape up that's crumpling, put a little, see if we can get that crease out, just make it easier for taping and cutting. There we go, that's sort of better. So as I look at this, I'm thinking my start point is okay, but it needs to be narrower for longer. So there is some little perforations which denote the middle. And we do need it to get slightly wider, but only fractionally. So if we try that and do that on the other side. And then I count the number of corrugations so that it's even. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's right there. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, just on the line. There we go. That looks narrower to me. So now if we follow that line round, terminating at this point here, can draw on here because we're painting it black, so I know that that's the termination point there. And then I have a fresh blade in here, not a sharpened one, a completely fresh one. We're just going to follow that line. There we go, and that gives that wider. So I don't know that it's perfect, but it's certainly not far off. So that's how we do that, and then make sure I've got no overhanging tape at this edge, at the tail there, because that's all black. I'll just take that off, and then make sure that's nice and flat as best we can. Right, okay, so that is now ready on that side for the black paint, and we've just got to draw in the rest of that circle on this side and then cut it out. So I know that I'm starting from this point here. That looks sort of even. It's a bit difficult when you're doing it freehand. Well, there we go. Hopefully that'll come out okay. So I'm going to carry on masking this up, and then I'll come back to you when we're ready to put some paint down, I think. I like to use all these little offcuts as much as I can, so that, you know, even though it's a funny shape, if it covers up, then that's all good. We do have one or two sort of photo etchy type lumps which are causing all sorts of problems with the tape, so I just pile plenty of tape on them to cover them up. There we go, just patch that up a little bit. There we go, so that's that side all masked off. So everything you can see that's unmasked here is going to be black. The full undersides are black. I've got this tail piece to do, it just copies that, and then there is a black edge to put on here, and then we are ready for paint. For a few years now, I've been using sponge as a way of masking difficult areas like the openings here. And it works so well, but it does sometimes have a bit of a drawback, and that is it can stick to the paint. So right now I'm just doing a little bit of a clean-up job and making sure I've got no sponge welded to my model. Because, well, I do I do have, so I'm just removing some of that. So I'm scraping away the most obvious bits that I can absolutely see. So like there's a bit there, it's a bit difficult to see because it's black. I'll just take that away. So that all cleaned up. The next thing we've got to think about is the red stripes. So let me just refresh your memory as to the red stripes. There we go. So we've got wing, upper, lower and tail. So they're not, as you might think they are, part of the decals. So this is going to be a little bit more difficult because there's no instructions on painting them particularly, other than what you've got here, and obviously this isn't to scale. So we're going to have to do some estimating, and to do that what I want to do is cut out these two decals and use those to get the spacing the same on both wings. Then that red stripe will run the same underneath, and then we'll do the same with the tail. So gonna start with my separate wing because that's just the easiest to handle if I can do that on camera, and then that's gonna give you a view of how we're doing this. But I do need to do both sides, just to as in the first decal here and the first decal on the other wing, because it's two different decals. One's the 33 and one's the DZ, and obviously they've got different spacings, I would think. So let's just cut a set out. There we go, and get that out of my way. Okay, so on this wing we've got the 33. So if I put that there, you can see what we're trying to emulate. So the 33, there's a bit of a space before you actually get to the decal from this line here. So I think it's a bit narrower than that. So I'm just gonna something like that, I think. And if we get the position sort of right, there we go. And I think my distance between the bottom curl of the 3 and the edge of the decal paper is about right for the edge of the red paint. Now then, on the other wing, the DZ, the D is much closer to the tip of the wing. So if we just get this other one, so sort of that distance, and also the Z is almost touching the red. So that's interesting because actually, yeah, So the width is going to end up being about the same. So that width, yeah, that just happens to be identical. Okay, so that means the red strip is in exactly the same place on both wings, and the decal fits in nicely. So that's a good thing to check. Right, we also need to put the width of the white crosses on. So that's these here. So the two crosses are all part of one decal. So we just need to sort out, let's get rid of that because that's going to come off in the water. So in terms of the distance for that, there's a small margin. Oh, let me tidy up this other edge. Okay. I think we are ready to get some masking tape out and mark this up. Right, doing the tail should be a bit easier. We don't really need to do measurements particularly. Our outside edge is where we've got the hinge, so we mask against that hard edge there and paint up to there. And when you look at the picture on the instructions, the red line ends just above, let me get something to point with, just above this little depression here. So maybe 2 corrugations up, so about this point. And I just got my decals cut out just to double check, and that gives us plenty of margin for the decals, so not really an issue. So I'm going to tape this up now, and then I'll show you what this looks like before we put some paint down, because I want to protect most of this, and we can do that with a bit of cling film. Right, I am all ready for painting. We've got her all masked up, a little bit of cling film around most of it. Will do the job nicely, and we've got the tail ready to go and our red stripe ready to go. Now, because we're trying to put red down on black, it can be a pain, and then we've got 2 colours here that, you know, we could have some differences. So I don't know how many coats we're going to end up doing, but again, I've gone with an enamel paint to help with that, because I find that acrylics, you're going to have to put more coats of paint down when you're going over 2 bold colours like that, so that you can get an even. So I'm using matte 60 from Humbrol enamel, and we're just going to see how we get on. So I'm going to put my respirator on. Let's get going. So our enamel red paint is dried, and I've got to be honest, I'm not really happy with the colour. I was going to have to do a second coat anyway, because you can still see a witness of the black underneath. That was completely expected. So second coat, we're going to change the paint system and try and brighten it up a little bit. and we're going to go with an acrylic matte red, which we can put straight down on top of the enamel, and basically use the enamel as a primer that's equalised the colour, ready for the top coat. So I'm going to get on and do that. I'm not going to do it on camera. You've seen me airbrushing. I'm just going to get the paint down, and then I'll come back to you when we come to take off all of this and see if we've managed to do it without making a mess. I have a lot less paint to put down this time, so I'm using my Mobius again, but I'm dropping down to the Mobius 2 with the 0.2 needle, just for a bit more control as we put this top layer on. Touching up the yellow now, we're going with that first, and then we can smarten up things like the black. I got a little bit of overspray from doing the red here, so we're just going to take that out now. So what I've done is I've thinned down my yellow paint that we use this with a spot of water, but you can see it's fairly thick and gloopy. It's not going to run. So I think I put 2 drops from a pipette into that, and that's just going to give me, that thicker viscosity is going to give me more pigment and allow me to cover up stronger colours with a light colour much better, and when it dries shouldn't be visible. But we're doing this before we clear coat, so that hopefully the clear coat will sort things out as well. And you'll also notice that what I'm not doing is painting it on. I'm sort of dabbing it on, which is also allowing the paint not to be thinned by the brush. We probably will still have to go in twice, and second time we go in, that's when we'll do the paint thing and just make things smooth. So that's what I'm doing right now. I've got very little touch up to do. It's gone as good as I could have hoped for, really. We've just got to visually crispen things up. I can't believe I'm actually doing this with just my reading glasses on. Must be mental. I will go around in a minute with my magnifying glasses on and make sure that we're good. The corrugations actually make this process easier because you can follow lines and what have you. As I'm talking and putting my magnifying glasses on, the corrugations were less of a problem than I had imagined they might be, and perhaps you had. They have caused problems, certainly, but by making sure that you've sprayed away from the tape edge, that's been easy to resolve. So yeah, not really a big job at hand here. It's just here, for example, let's see if I can get you in a bit closer. Just where this is crossing over several, you've got a little bit of bleed in 1 or 2 places, and it's certainly not all of them, so it's gone really well. So yeah, and then where we've got some raised rivets, the tape hasn't quite gone down so well, and we need to touch up with the black and just straighten it up. But yeah, this is looking really quite good now, so I can go back in, second coat that, and that's lovely and crisp now. So yeah, really good. So the next stage when I finish this, will be to gloss coat it all. Then we can do the detail painting, and by gloss coating we can use mattes and satins to give us some better definition when we there we go, that looks good. When we detail paint some different colours like the leathers and aluminiums and things that we've got to do, and that'll just really help it get a bit of a lifelike feel and take it away from being toy-like, which is always something in my mind that I'm trying to get away from. There we go, so that's that line done. You can see underneath, it does look a bit darker when you look at it underneath, but you can't see when it crosses the line on the wing, so that's what we were looking for. I don't think I've got any touch up underneath, so that's perfect. So I'm just going to go around and see where I think I've got a little bit of touch up to do, where I can smarten things up a little bit, and then when I've done that, I'll come back to you when we're clear coating ahead of putting the decals on, which I'm really looking forward to. Love a bit of decal work. So whilst I'm touching up the black, I'm also painting in some of the areas that need to be black, which are detail painted areas. So all the frames around the windows and the doors, for example, they've just been sprayed in yellow for now, but actually they need to be painted in black, so that's what I'm doing. And I'm, you know, touching up as we go. I've equalised the joining point here where it thins down, and then we can touch up again with the yellow just to do any final corrections. So yeah, it's all taking a little bit of time, but it's all coming together quite well, and I keep referring back to my instructions, just double checking details just to make sure we get them right, but so far looks like we're doing okay. So I'm going to carry on just painting in the black, and then I'll come back to you when we carry on with the detail painting. I'm also going to be painting the wheel hubs whilst we've got the black paint out, because they need to be black as well, and then we can get the tyres done and mount it on. So this is quite a slow process, because going through everything that's been painted, making sure that I've not scratched any paint off while I've been handling it, making sure everything's nice and crisp, and just making sure that the depth of paint is right and we've not got any sort of areas where it looks like we need to just darken it up a little bit. So yeah, and of course black shows everything, so I have to take into account that. And round complex structures like this, did we manage to get in everywhere with the airbrush, or do we need to just brush in one or two areas? It's mainly good, but I'd have had to paint on the inside of this frame, this photo etch frame here. So there we go, that's where I'm up to. I'm just catching up with little bits and pieces and starting the detail painting. So I'll show you some of that detail painting as we do it.
So normally when I'm doing decals, I'll have maybe a couple in soak. I'll let them soak for a moment. When it looks like it's soaking into the paper, I take them out and I'll have 2 or 3. But because we're putting this on corrugation and you've got such a high risk of air getting trapped underneath and therefore silvering, I'm just going to do them one at a time until you know, I feel confident that I can speed that up a little bit. There's no point, you know, if it's going to take me ages to settle it and what have you, then what's the point? So we're going to put this on. What we're going to do is we're going to try and make this as wet as possible and then suck the water out, which will help it lay and hopefully not trap the air. These are cartograph decals, and I never ever use things like micro set on cartograph decals when you're first laying them down, because they're quite thin decals and that softener is quite strong, and you've got a much higher risk of the decal ripping, especially if you're going to have to move things around, and moving things around on here will definitely be a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm just wetting my finger, and we're just going to wet the surface. This is the water that my decal's floating around in, and I can see that decal's sort of saying, right, I'm ready. I can just move that around, so I'm actually going to just give it a moment more because I could feel it was a bit sticky, and I want it to be a little bit more soaked than that. I want it to move around a lot easier. There we go. Right, so let's get that hanging over the edge a little bit, and my positioning, as I remember, if you look closely on the instructions, you can just about see where the rivets are. Okay, but only just about. Okay, so just gonna straighten up that leg. There we go, got a little kink in there, get rid of that. Okay, that is not looking bad, that's quite straight. I'm looking at it against that edge, which is relatively straight. Yeah, that looks okay. Positioning, height is okay, not too shabby. So, a little bit of tissue. Going to start in the middle, press. If you've ever put a screen protector on your mobile phone, it's basically the same thing. I'm using it like a squeegee and just pushing the air and the water out. And then I'm just going to put it on top, give it a dab. There we go. Now, I am expecting that we will have at least some problems. So now it's on and it's sat where I want it, I can use some Microsol. This is the one that softens for contours and things, and we will go over the edge of the decal film. We can use the brush as a squeegee again. And what we want is for this decal to contract, and then as it relaxes, find its shape again. And it should sit nice and lovely in all of these corrugations. So I don't think that's gone down too bad. I'm going to stop messing with it now. And away we go. Now it's 32 degrees here as I'm doing this, so things will dry fairly quickly. So I'm going to work that way. So the next decals to put in are the little white crosses in the red section. Now let's see if we can get this right first time. There's bound to be one decal that goes way off where I want it to be. But that is not the one. That's gone down pretty nice. My distance is pretty much the same. So yeah, happy with that. Now you might have just spotted what I've just spotted, which is there's a rip in the decal. I wasn't aware I'd done it, but a moment ago I just ran my brush over it, and it's obviously still got softener on, and that's made the decal, because it's so thin, collect. So I'll have to touch that up before we drop paint over it. I have got a little bit of silvering between the 33. Don't know if we pick that up on the camera. You can just see it there. there. We can deal with that with a pin, burst some air in. So yeah, I was hoping they wouldn't be too problematic. In the main they're not, but actually this one has been a lot worse than that one. This one seems to have gone down really well, but I can still see smooth decal, which means there's air trapped under it, so it is going to need more softening to help it settle. So I think my first impression that the decals will go down not too bad is not going to bear fruit. Such is life. So we'll put that all to one side, let that dry. I'm not going to do the underside decals until those are all dry and set, so we can crack on with the aeroplane in its entirety now. Some of the decals have gone down much better than others. I do have some trapped air in places and I'm just dealing with that now, or trying to. This is my second pass. The two white crosses are the most problematic. They just don't want to sit really, and we may end up having to touch up and paint in some decal areas. And then, you know, for some reason we've got lots of trapped air in this, but all the little rivets, rows of rivets, are making the process of putting the decals down even harder because they're all raised. The decals tenting, so it's going taut across the top of the corrugations, and then you've got rivets that are raised which are keeping it up in between the corrugations. So it's not fun trying to get this to sit, but like I say, we're just preparing for the third pass, so wherever I can still see silver and bubbles, we're just trying to give the air a route of escape. So a little bit more microsol, and we'll see how that sets. The problem is we're softening the decal, and the decal's pulling tight and it's leaving the air in because it can't actually sink the decal down. So what you saw me doing there with a new blade was just going through and giving us some escape routes for the air. See if we can squeegee it out. And see if we can get it to settle. Right, I'm going to keep doing this and then I'll come back to you in a short while. In between getting my decals to settle, I can do some detail painting, and I'm starting with the aluminium on the frames of the wing that's being left in two halves. So we can start just putting the base colour down. I'm using MIG metal colour aluminium for this. It's a nice aluminium. Whenever I use it, people always comment on it, ask what paint it is. It does go down very, very well. Now you have to remember that the join has a cover over it, so we need to paint in the aluminium that would is visible because the cover's not on, and that needs to be done on the main wing root as well. There we go. I need to just get in and paint those lower surfaces as well. Right, well, you don't need to watch me painting, but you now know what I'm up to, and I will come back to you with whatever I'm doing next. I'm not sure, it could be wheels, could be installing the glazing, it could be painting in the leather around the window openings. Just don't know. I'm using ICM's Leather Brown, which is considerably darker than the Humbrol 62, for the leather that goes around the edge here of the well, it's actually the doors, if you really want to give them a name. Once we've painted them, we can put the windows in, but they're not fully glazed. There's just a little windshield at the front. So they start here, and it won't really be until I've got them painted we'll understand if there's any texturing that'll come out in a wash, but I don't think there is. Got a little hair just sticking out of the side, and it's bothering me that I'm going to get paint on it and then mark something, so I'm just going to nip that off. There we go. And you can see this acrylic paint dries really quickly. By the time I've got to the bottom here, what I've painted will be dry. Damn, I got some on the black. That's a shame. See if we can lift that off with a bit of water. So just a wet brush. Yeah, there we go. Managed to get that off. So I always keep a brush to hand for little moments like that.
Hi, hope you're enjoying the video. I put a lot of effort into making these videos, putting them together, recording them, editing. It takes up so much time. I would really love it if you could just hit that like button for me. It will take you a fraction of a second and it costs you nothing, and it means so much to me and the channel, and will help other people who might enjoy this video find it. You done it? Thank you.
Right then, on with the propeller of our Junkers, and what we've done is we've given it a base coat in buff, and now we're going to use oil brushes to give us a wood grain effect. So I'm using earth and ochre. I want to have a lighter finish. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by putting the ochre down. So if you've watched the channel before, you've seen me do this before, but I will show it because I've always got new subscribers. You mustn't worry if you put too much on, because at the end of the day this is an oil-based paint, so you just use the appropriate thinner to take it off. So what this is going to do is going to give us the background colour for the wood graining. So we've just put some drops on. Now we're going to blend that in. I'm using a little bit of packing foam. You want the squishy type, not the hard type, which is too scratchy. And I'm just going to take it up to the centre boss there, and we're going to drag it across like so. Make sure we get the edge, and that gives us our very basic background wood effect. Join it up there, and then up to the centre boss. Centre boss hasn't been painted yet, that'll be painted later. There we go, and then do that on the underneath. Just check you've not left a tip bare or blade edge not done. There we go. So that's our base colour, and I could leave it like that and that would be perfectly good, but I'm not going to. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a slightly darker element in as well. So that's where the earth comes in. So it's a much darker colour, and what I don't want to do is massively darken this. I just want to have a slightly darker wood graining. So I've just taken most of the oil off the brush, and I'm just going to put tiny little dabs in. So you can see how much smaller those little dabs are. I'm just using the corner of the brush. Okay, that'll do for now. We'll do the other side in a sec. And this should give us a little bit of depth and texture to our wood effect. So probably needs a little bit more. I've perhaps been a little bit too light on it. Let's still going to get most of the paint off, but just be a little bit more heavy-handed than I was. I was going to say it's easier to take to put on than to take off, but it's not really. It's not really in this instance. There we go. So what we're not trying to do is blend it in, we're just trying to add a little bit of depth in certain areas. So you can see how that is breaking up now a little bit. They're not quite knots. I'm not looking for knots. We don't want, you wouldn't have knots in a propeller because a knot is a weakness, and they're not gonna have that. So it's really about just having a slightly different shades in your grains, really, is how to think about it. Okay, there you go. So what we'll do is we'll clear coat that now, and that'll seal it, and then when the clear coat's dry, we're then in a position to do a filter on top if we decide we need one. Don't always do a filter. So I usually use the MIG acrylic crystal colours. So in this instance we'd go with the crystal yellow. But I think this might be just okay clear coated. Now obviously you don't want to brush paint that. This takes a little bit of time to dry, and then set hard takes longer, so you're better just airbrushing it. So I'm going to leave this and let this naturally dry while I'm doing the other stuff to finish the model, and then we'll clear coat it and decide whether we're airbrushing it or not at that point. So there we go. We've got the boss to paint on this. It's probably the last thing we'll do on the build is paint the boss. Tyres now, and I'm going to use Vallejo 71315 tyre black. My preferred tyre black. Unlike other tyre blacks, this has a hint of green in, which gives it a nice bit of realism, I think. So brushable straight from the bottle Model Air as a general rule. So just gonna mount that on a cocktail stick. Let's find a suitable one. There we go. Oh, yeah, that should be fine. So I'm just gonna trim the end a little bit so it's a bit of a tighter fit. Let's just whip that point off, square it off a little bit. No, still needs a little bit wider. What should be too wide now? Ah, there we go. Nice tight fit. So we can just get straight stuck into this now, and just does feel like we're coming to the end of the build. When you get all these little jobs right at the end. Really should put my magnifying glasses on. So I'm going to do that because I want to get right up to that rim and not go over it. So usually 2 coats with this particular paint. You get the idea. Just going to carefully get this painted up. So I'll get this done off camera now, and I'll see you in a moment. Right, some clear parts to sort out now. Including the 2 front windshields, which can now be installed. I'm just going to go in with a knife and take a little bit of paint away from the mounting points, which is just going to allow me to ensure I get a better contact with the adhesive. So very carefully just going to scrape away some of the paint right here at the bottom. So let's do a test fit. I don't know, but I'm assuming, yeah, I'm assuming I had that the right way. Right, so the little mounting lug is a little bit too deep, so that needs to come down a little bit. I think the best way to do, so I don't get a load of dust everywhere, is just trim that down a little bit with my knife. I can then take that off. There we go, that sits better. Looks a bit odd though, like that. Let me just check. Just going to check my instructions. I'm not quite sure at what point. They put it on quite early in the instructions, which makes no sense whatsoever. I quite often think they do instructions without thinking about painting. Yeah, no, that's correct. It is supposed to look a bit odd. Okay, so we can glue that in. We've got quite a sizable frame on here, so I'm alright using this brush for that. That's the first one on. Very carefully put a small amount of adhesive into the joint. So that means this door is ready to go on, but I do have one problematic window, which is the window that dropped out from here, which I need to think about how I'm going to do that. My gut feel at the moment is the best thing to do is put some PVA glue in, and then put it into position. Yeah, okay, let's have a think about that. Right then, just a little bit of CA adding onto our hinge points. So we'll put that on the female part of the hinge. And then we can carefully just plop that in. It says there we go. Well, that didn't work, did it? Let's put a little bit more on the male part of the hinge and try again. There we go. Let's see if we can get that in now. See, the problem is you and the camera. I'd have this in a completely different position if you weren't here. So let's just get it lined up. This should work now. Just need the glue to start bonding. There we go. Okay, next thing we've got to do is some door handles for the outside of the doors, which we've painted separately. So we can do that now. Let's get this door handle on. The separate door handles actually, in this instance, really do make a bit of a difference. It does add something to the door. Looks really cool. So still have a little bit of touch up to do in places, which will be a quick job. It's, you know, a dab of paint here and a dab of paint there, so it's all fairly quick. It's going to take longer to get the paint out and clean up afterwards than to actually do the job, and it always gets like that when you get right to the last few bits of the build. There we go, I think that's positioned okay. Right, we could do put the wheels on now. So again, I've just gone with a little bit of medium CA, only because I have it out and it's to hand. You could easily use plastic glue for this. So my oil brusher is dry enough to allow me to gently brush on my clear coat. So I'm using the same Vallejo gloss that I've used throughout this build, and obviously it's going onto an oil surface, but that's fine. You sometimes get a little bit of surface tension. All you've got to do is move it about a little bit and break that tension and you'll be fine. So there's a bit there and a bit there. Okay, and then we can do this top surface. So I'm starting at the boss, making sure that I'm right up to the boss, and then we can work out from there and just thin it out. Make sure we get the edge of the blade. And I'll just work over it a few times, make sure it's nice and smooth. Simple as that. This should be a nice, good looking light wood propeller when it's dry. Right then, got the boss to paint and we've got some touch up to do. So I'm going to do that and then I'll come back to you. Okay, we've got the propeller boss to do. I'm using gunmetal from MIG Metal Paints. I do like these paints for metallics. And I'm going to go in with, it's a 5-0 short bristle brush, which just gives me plenty of control. And we can just paint in nice and easily. There we go. So that looks okay. Really comes to life, and we mustn't forget to do the back. So even though it'll be a bit restricted in the view of that, we still need to do it. You never know what you're gonna see. Okay, so we're starting to add the final finishing touches to this.
This is Tamiya brown panel line accent colour, and you know, as long as you keep in your mind that muck is never black, you can always do something fairly authentic, because this is a bit of artistic flair right at the end. Now, everything else we've been told to do, we've been told where to put our paint, what colours to use, so on and so forth, but now we can get stuck in and make it our own a little bit. So I used brown as my default colour, and then sometimes I'll add a hint of black to darken it depending on what it is, and then I'll also use Tamiya do a grey, which is also quite good for highlighting. Okay, we're just going to put some of the same brown wash into the boss here. It's just going to highlight the detail a little bit. I always put a little bit more on, go a little bit heavier than you think, because when it dries it lightens up. We can also use it to create a little bit of shadow in places, so around this open door where we've got a lip, it's ideal for highlighting the lip, giving a little bit of definition. So there we are, done. That's the end of our journey of the Miniart 1:48 scale Junkers F13 early production version. What's my final thoughts having constructed it? Well, it's not been without a challenge or two, to be honest. The internal bulkheads didn't fit particularly well, and you can't have the engine cover over the engine particularly well. So I don't know whether that was me, or I don't know whether that was the kit, but it didn't work for me at least. Other than that though, everything else has pretty much gone together. Oh, the seats didn't work, did they? The placement of the seats didn't work, and we had to modify the plastic parts to get them to sit. But everything else went together really well. The fuselage came together beautifully. We've had to put no filler on any of the fuselage, which is a real blessing when you've got such a high level of raised detail on the surfaces. So yeah, I all in all, I'm happy with the actual model, even putting aside one or two of those issues. It's a bit fiddly in places, particularly the engine. The engine is a bit needlessly complex, I think. But when it's done, it looks stunning, and it's a really nice representation of the end of the vehicle. So I can't really grumble. Now, I had some issues with my mojo during the time I was building this, so I don't know whether I didn't enjoy building this as much as I expected because I'd lost my mojo, or I didn't enjoy it and therefore I lost my mojo. I don't know, but it wasn't a fun build for me, and like I say, that could just be where my headspace was at the time. The model itself, when done, as you can see, is really stunning and builds up well in the main. I think the detail is nice. The decals have been tricky to put on. Getting them to settle has been, as you would have expected on such a fine corrugated surface, a bit of a challenge. What I would recommend if you're doing this particular paint scheme is mask the white and paint the white crosses on, because getting those to settle, you can now see the red through them in places, which is a bit of a shame. So if I was going to go any further with this, I would paint those in, but I've decided I'm going to leave them for what it's worth. I also had an issue, again, self-inflicted, with the window popping out. That came out when I was putting masking on it. And in hindsight, I should have glued the windows in and masked them before I added the fuselage half. And that was my process error. And then I've not been able to get that window back in. Having said that, the paint scheme is absolutely stunning. It looks absolutely gorgeous. It's very, very nice. Now, I've shown it with one wing off, so I've got one wing in transportation position. Normally when I do one wing down, one wing up, which I do sometimes for space on the shelf, the wing's still attached, it's folded up or folded back or something like that, so it doesn't affect your weighting so much. So just bear in mind, because it didn't occur to me, and I don't know why, but I just ploughed on without thinking about it, that if you take the wing off, the plane won't sit on its wheels properly. So you do need a little something. I will fabricate something that looks a little better at some point. This one won't go on my display because of the popped window, but I won't. It will go in my in the attic sort of graveyard of models, which I've got some shelves where I display models that aren't on display in the house. So it's not going to go anywhere. They now do a seaplane version of this, and I think that would be very interesting to build as well. And you might have a little bit more stability with one wing off. But in the main, it looks stunning. There's a great level of detail. I only added a little bit of wiring in the cockpit, which you absolutely can see, so it was worth doing. And I think I added a clock dial on inside the cabin, which you can see if you try really hard with a torch, but I know it's in there. So yeah, I think it's a nice model overall, despite the one or two fit issues and a few little challenges I had, and it being a little bit fiddly in places. The photo etch lens to it, it's not overly done. Some of the instruction process I would question because it makes it hard to paint, and that's bit me in the bum a couple of times. But all in all, not bad. As for actually painting the corrugations, it was a lot easier than you might think. The trick is to make sure that as you're airbrushing, your spray is going away from the edge so that the paint's not collecting and being forced down underneath. That's the basic trick. I had a little bit of touch up here. This curve on both sides was almost impossible to mask tightly, and I had a little bit of bleed, which we then touched back in, so no biggie. So yeah, I'm happy with it. I'm going to leave you with a few pictures now, and thank you very much for joining me. Our next build is a Tamiya Panzer 1 2024 new tool, which we're going to be doing exclusive. The whole model will be in Tamiya enamel paints, including the weathering. So if you want to see how that comes together, hit the subscribe button, and if you enjoyed the build and the outcome, don't forget to hit the like button so other people can find the channel too. Thanks very much for your support, and until the next time I see you, you enjoy your modelling. Bye for now.